In a world of 350 billion movie podcasts, two chumps have decided that now is the time for cult movies to engage in combat. Disagreements will be had, blood may be spilled, and voiceover artists most definitely will not be paid. This is Cult Film Face-Off.
Hello and welcome to episode 51 of Cult Film Face-Off. My name is Chet Roivers, with me as usual is Nick Leonard.
No killing what can't be killed, no stopping what can't be stopped.
This episode we're going to be looking at two films that debuted, in Europe at least, on Netflix. Duncan Jones's Mute and Alex Garland's Annihilation, both released this year, 2018. This is where I insert the usual disclaimer about the fact that these might not be construed as cult films, and we're not saying that they are. Blah blah blah, the same nonsense we always say. Thanks incidentally to Jason Dyer for the suggestion for this episode.
Big ups.
We will start with the first film to be released, at least in Europe, which is Mute, directed by Duncan Jones from 2018. Following the mysterious disappearance of his girlfriend, a mute Amish bartender embarks on a tour of Berlin's seedy criminal underworld in pursuit of answers. Mute.
Your girlfriend has secrets. You lost, mate? Take a hint and fuck off.
Not very talkative.
Something's going on.
You need to maintain a sense of humor, babe. You gonna give me some trouble, big boy? Or are you gonna channel that famous Amish serenity?
I need to tell you something.
This is gonna stop right now.
It ain't a secret anymore.
Would you do anything for her?
Say you're sorry.
Fucking say it!
Why the hell can't he talk?
He doesn't need words.
Okay, so I assume we hadn't seen these before we were requested to do this episode.
Correct.
Yeah, they're brand new, weeks old.
So getting a lot of talk online about them.
Yeah.
It's coming from two directors, and they're back doing sci-fi, which is the two films that kind of, with Duncan Jones, it's Moon, and with Alex Garland, it's Ex Machina.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, hadn't seen them, but very pumped about this double bill.
So Mute. How did Mute go down with you?
So my initial thoughts were I was very excited. I like the soundtrack. Clint Mansell is on composer duty.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the safest hands that's ever committed to something with his soundtracks. But just a brilliant soundtrack.
Yeah.
Really atmospheric, really immersive. But for me, a big problem that this film had was its extremely fractured narrative. So half of the film is concerned about Skarsgård and being reunited with his missing partner.
Yep.
The other half of the film is concerned with Paul Rudd trying to get his papers. Yeah, to be honest, I didn't engage with either of those narratives particularly. The Paul Rudd one being more fractured because you've got loads of subplots going on in there as well about his friend Duck being very attracted to very, very young women. So for me, the big problem is the fractured narrative. What was I'll go into this in a bit of detail when we start going back and forth, but what was your feelings of Mute? What did you think about Mute?
I liked it quite a lot. From my side, I'm prepared to admit that this episode might be all about expectations, because one of these films launched with critical praise. One of them launched being slammed as one of the worst films of the year. Going in, I was expecting the worst, and all I know is that I was gripped from start to finish. I had a real issue with the lead actor. I think the biggest problem it has is he's just won an Emmy for his performance in this HBO show, Alexander Skarsgård. So I watched him in two things: the Martin McDonagh's brother thing from a few years ago that was absolutely god awful, and he was bad in it. And I'm just not feeling it. Him as a leading man, he's quite inexpressive, and he just seems a bit untrained. And he didn't. This is one. To be fair to him, this is one of the few performances in history where I reckon it would have been better if it was a computer-generated character, or like he was rotoscoped or something. A very blunt way of illustrating his alienation. But I don't think that you needed a really, really talented actor to pull that role off. And I think I felt like he didn't have the chops to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I don't think he was great. I also, and this is a very personal, this is a very personal viewpoint, but have got a really strong hate for Paul Rudd.
What?
And yeah,
What?
exactly. I know.
That's really weird.
Yeah, I know that I'm probably because he's just such a likeable guy. But I really don't. I find him vanilla, and I find him mediocre to a point of I really want to hit him in the face.
Wow.
So I don't like Paul Rudd. I've whenever he crops up in a film, I feel that my heart sinks. You know, he's been in films that I've enjoyed. Right, Role Models. I really enjoyed Role Models. As soon as Rudd crops up, I start getting distracted by his screen presence. He's not funny. He hasn't got good comic timing.
Really?
I really didn't like him. I mean, Wanderlust is just. I hated Wanderlust anyway, but he was especially bad in Wanderlust, and he's bad in 40-Year-Old Virgin. He's bad in Anchorman, and he actually plays something that I would kind of liken to like probably what Paul Rudd's like in real life. And I know this may sound really harsh to people, but seriously, that there are people, I'm sure that people that are listening to this, or I have, an unrational hate of Nick Grimshaw as well, the Radio 1 DJ.
Right, yeah.
I hate his voice. I hate what he's done to Radio 1. I hate his show. I hate the way that he goes, I'm here with my celebrity pal, Nick Grimshaw is an absolute nightmare. Oh, Nick Grimmy, he's just so jovial. I can't stand him. And I really can't stand Paul Rudd. So I kind of had it on a double header of the acting kind of being a bit of a weak point of this, and Skarsgård I agree wasn't strong enough in terms of if you're doing a performance which is you're not speaking.
Yeah, you have to.
You've got to convey so much with your face and with nuances and with slight expression. He had pretty much a blank expression throughout.
Exactly, and he also periodically he seemed to be playing the character as a kind of lumbering idiot, like a buffoon. And I was like, is he supposed to be stupid, or is that just bad choices? He just didn't feel like leading man material to me. I know he's been winning awards recently for his work on TV, but I've saw The War Against Everyone and this fairly close together, and I was just like, I'm not feeling it at this point. At this point, he seems slightly untrained and ill-disciplined to me. But that's just me.
I also thought the weakness to this narrative and this story is that it didn't give us enough time to really buy into that relationship and how much they cared for one another. I think they have one isolated scene where they're sitting down and they're eating, and then their images posted around all of these, this futuristic city in futuristic Berlin. I didn't really get that they were deeply involved.
I don't know. I really bought into it. I thought she was great. Zainab Saleh, I think her name is. I think Duncan Jones did what Michael Cimino did in Heaven's Gate. In that the studio probably wanted a movie star at the centre, but she's a very, very unusual. She created a character that somebody might sort of fall for, rather than just being a traditional beauty standing there looking gorgeous. And I found her, my curiosity about her helped my interest in the narrative, because I was genuinely intrigued as to what had happened to her. I've heard people say this is confusing. I didn't find that. I've heard people say it's boring. I didn't find that either. And it's really nebulous when you talk about world building and how a film builds a world and whether you respond to the world. But I can't remember the last time I've watched actually any film when I was just scouring the frame looking for sort of bits of information. I was really studying this film in great detail, and I just was kind of hungry for. I don't know. I just was tuned into it completely from the start, from the get go until the finish.
Everyone talks about the look of Mute, and they talk about Blade Runner, and you said it worked really well for you. That vision of the future. It's kind of like for me, it was like it made me think about very recently Ghost in the Shell, about how good the look of that future was done. It was for me. It was inconsistent. I think it was a bit jarring going from at night time it's the future, in the daytime you're back to the 90s or something. I found that that didn't work. It didn't work.
Well, there wasn't really much in the daytime. When was the daytime?
It was jutting about from when you'd see daytime shots, or in the bowling alley. It'd be super futuristic or not futuristic whatsoever.
I think the whole thing was that it was a blend. I thought that's why I found it so interesting. It's clearly a neon future as you'd expect it, but there's a lot of old stuff going in there. That's why I found sort of searching the frame quite interesting, because it was that blend.
My problem was that the narrative was so fragmented, and it didn't really give enough time for either of those storylines to really properly develop.
He's off screen for too long. The lead character.
He's off screen for too long, right? And then what happens is you're getting all of this the secondary story about Paul Rudd and his army pal and him trying to get his papers. And then by the time that Skarsgård turns up with a big fucking lump of to start whacking people, I think it's a big. It's a pipe that he's carrying around. I can't remember what it was.
I can't remember.
Can you remember what it was?
No.
Well, when he turns up and he basically has his his revenge and he's killing everybody, I was kind of like, oh, I've completely forgotten even about that storyline when he crops up. So the emotional heft and the actual how successful that was completely lost because it had been completely watered down because of spending so much time on the other narrative, which wasn't interesting at all. I just didn't find it interesting. Didn't find those characters interesting. It was very nihilistic. It was very cold. I found it a very hollow experience. I really wanted to like this film because I fucking love Moon and I've got a lot of time for Source Code, and this was just a real disappointment.
I thought Paul Rudd was excellent in this, and I thought Justin Theroux, who played his buddy Duck, was superb, and I kept picturing him in the lead role. I thought he's so good. Actually, I'll tell you something about his performance. It's so good that the nauseatingly 90s thing he does of ending every phrase with sentence with babe, babe, that wasn't even annoying. That's how good he is. If he was the lead, I reckon this film could have really fucking just shone.
Yeah, he was playing very much against form in terms of what he's played in the past, and it was a good performance.
Yeah, the thing is, what I really like about that whole, when that film goes off on that tangent, I feel like I've seen so many films recently where you're introduced to characters and you like them, you like being around them, they're kind of like upbeat and fun to be around, and then at some point in the film will turn around and go, huh, you really reckon these are nice guys? These are fucking nasty guys. Look at the lives they lead. Look at where they work. Look at what they do. The journey from when you meet those characters to where the film ends, it's just progressively like, fuck me, they're horrible, they're fucking horrible people. And by the end of it, I found something really, really bracing about that, because I feel like that's often used as a twist, and realising slowly they are irredeemably fucking horrible, both of them, one more so than the other, obviously you could definitely say that, but I thought that was so... I was honestly refreshed and gripped. So while I was watching it, I didn't actually mind that Skarsgård disappeared. Although I do acknowledge that's a big problem with the film. I also just kind of like that, it feels like it's building towards this big conspiracy, and then at the end it's about a sort of a secret child, and I kind of like the fact that you expect something else, and it just went far smaller. I mean, to some that might seem like lazy writing because a secret child. I mean, that's
you kind of feel. Yeah, I mean that was a kind of a fizzle out in terms of a grand reveal. It was just a bit consequential. Oh right, so that's how these two different storylines interlay. It's like the guy that you'll follow, Duck and what's Paul Rudd's character called? Cactus. Yeah, you're just like following it, and it's like, oh right, of course. Well, you have to let's tie these storylines together at the end, and so it's just like, really, that's it. Disappointing. Yeah,
it really did a number on me. And I mean, like you said, the Clint Mansell score, I think it might be his best. I mean, it really puts a tilt on the world.
It's the best thing. It's the best thing for me. It's the best thing about it.
I mean, yeah, it really puts emphasis on when the plot actually fires up. I think it's a brilliant score. Apparently, they're in talks to get it released. And I think that's great, because I think it's on watching this film once. I think it struck me as well as much as the iconic soundtrack for Moon, which you hear all the time, sort of in adverts and whatnot. I mean, all I can say is that I can understand why people found this so annoying, because Duncan Jones, there's a quote, an old Amish proverb at the beginning, and then he dedicates it to his parents. One of whom obviously is David Bowie. And I'm like, this is not a film about anything. It's all affectations. Why is he Amish? Why is he a Luddite? Why can't he speak? It doesn't serve any purpose. It's all affectation. So I can understand why people find it annoying, because it purports to be saying something and it doesn't say anything. When I was watching it and I was really invested and I was really enjoying it, I thought, I'm going to get to the end of this film and I'm going to be thinking about it and I'm going to be wanting to talk about it. As soon as it finished, I haven't thought about it since, until today. I honestly didn't think about it. I think in the heat of the moment, I think it's just pulp. That's all it is. It's a really, really, I think, very efficient pulp thriller. But there's nothing deeper. There's no deeper meaning. There's nothing to it.
I've spoken to friends two friends, and both of them couldn't get through it. One of them lasted 20 minutes. One of them lasted an hour. And I think a lot of people are going to kind of jump ship on this before it's reached its conclusion. I remember watching it. It was a slog. I remember pausing it to go to the toilet and going, God Christ, I'm only an hour through this. So. It feels like a very long film as well. I really wanted to I was just so disappointed. I really, really wanted to like this. I went in with really an open heart and open eyes, and then just like, I know it took him 12 years to make this as well, so it's a real labour of love from Duncan Jones. But yeah, it just suffers so badly from this fractured narrative, and just yeah, it kind of kills it for me.
I was just gripped. I just thought it was expertly told. I mean, I understand it's unusual, and I understand most of the criticism that have been levelled against it. But I was gripped from beginning to end. But I do agree that once in the dark, wanting to be told a story, I think it works great. It isn't meaningful in any way, shape, or form.
No, but I just want a gripping story, and I wasn't gripped because it just doesn't spend enough time with either of those. It's 50-50 film, and that's the detriment of both those plot lines. I'd rather it just spend the whole film concentrating on Skarsgård trying to find Nerdira and what's this, going into her social network and finding out her relationships and doing all of that, or just going into Cactus and Duck's relationship and him trying to get his papers. It was just fractured, and that was to the detriment of the film because with them just half cocked, there just wasn't enough to grab my attention. There wasn't, and the characters as well. I mean, I'm not enjoying spending time with these characters, and I get it. They're anti-heroes. I understand. They're anti-heroes. They're not very nice people to be around.
They're not even anti-heroes. I mean, they're
just horrible pieces of work that get more horrible as the film progresses. Yeah.
But I mean, that realisation really, I found it quite powerful. Because it starts off when they're Paul Rudd's being. He actually does a bit of a comic routine that's vaguely similar to his famous bit when he's trying to.
And he's got a comic moustache as well. And that's all.
Yeah, I quite like hanging around with these guys, which is what you feel in every crime movie. So for it, normally in that situation, the film would go, oh yeah, look, they're fucking nasty. The slow-paced realisation, drawing these characters, and just everything about them is awful.
Yeah, the only redeeming feature is his relationship with his daughter. That's the only positive thing about Paul Rudd's character. Well, is that he loves his daughter. Yeah, sure. That's it.
And I can understand. I'm very, very. I'd be very surprised if Duncan Jones had seen Austin Powers, because the last half hour I was like, just kill him, don't do this, just kill him there and then. Dragging this out is going to result in your plan to kill him not going to plan. The fact that whole end bit, just kill him, just get it over and done with if you're going to do it, otherwise there wouldn't be a film. That's so old fashioned that I actually couldn't believe it was in the film. Yeah. But
it was just a very laboured. It felt very long, and it felt hollow. It was long and hollow, and it just reminded me of loads of other sci-fi films that I would have rather be watching, or things that have come out that I'm thinking, I'm quite interested about Altered Carbon. I'm quite interested about the Cloverfield Paradigm. See what they're like. Yeah, this was just a huge disappointment.
I liked it a lot. I admit, that might just be me. I had very, very rock bottom expectations, and it just worked on me. Everything worked. I was intrigued by the world. I was gripped. Honestly, I was gripped from start to finish. And
we've been. I mean, that world has been done so many times before. What's different about it?
Well, I don't
in terms of the look.
It's necessarily different. I was just interested in it. To be perfectly honest, this isn't a popular opinion, but I've only seen Blade Runner 2049 once. But as beautiful as Roger Deakins made that film look, I just don't believe that anybody lives in that world. Those images look amazing in a coffee table book, but as beautiful as they are, here I was really kind of just studying the frame, looking for. It felt like a plane, and it's such a nebulous conceit, because when you're talking about world building, you're often talking about yourself as much as the filmmaking. But everything about this film worked on me. But I don't deny that it is a meaningless, very, very bleak and nihilistic film. But what can I say? My buttons were pushed. I was really, really gripped, and I will probably watch it again. And who knows, maybe I'll hate it. But I mean,
I'm definitely not watching it again.
A lot of fans of this film think that there's a conspiracy against Netflix, and movie critics have slammed it because they're anti-Netflix. Which, as soon as stuff like that happens, you need to check out because that's not sensible. But the Metacritic score for this movie is not far off the Will Smith film Bright.
Yeah,
have you seen that?
No, I've just heard nothing good about it.
Critics have really let themselves down, because the fact that that's to stand toe to toe almost as being equally bad films. That is terrible.
Have you seen Bright?
Yes. Don't ever watch Bright. It is fucking shocking. This is, I mean, even I understand the criticism level of this, and if it didn't work for you, it didn't work. But just for shit, Bright is an appalling film. But anyway, I actually genuinely like this film for all of its issues. Obviously, you didn't.
No, I didn't, and I really was pumped for it, and it left me really cold.
Okay, well, let's move on to our second film then, Annihilation, also from 2018, directed by Alex Garland. A soldier turned biologist, an anthropologist, a psychologist, a cartographer and a linguist travel into a spherical biological anomaly which is slowly expanding across a North American coastline. Annihilation.
Let me see him.
He's extremely ill.
You have to tell me where he was, what he was doing.
It was his decision to go in. It's something they termed the shimmer.
We've sent in drones and teams of people, but nothing comes back.
But something has.
You're a biologist. You served in the military.
If I knew what happened, I could save his life.
The boundary's getting bigger, it's expanding. We're talking cities, states.
You need to know what's inside. So do I.
Okay, so Annihilation, 2018. What did you make of this film?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I think the cast were all brilliant.
All of them?
Natalie, all the women were great.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought Natalie Portman was especially good.
Yeah.
As it was in the past, you'd normally have groups of men that were embarking on missions like this,
Yeah.
and I find it very interesting when it's a group of women embarking on a mission like this. There's some really good exchanges of dialogue, especially between. There's one in particular with Natalie Portman's character Lena and Shepard. And they're talking about her daughter dying of leukemia and her suffering multiple bereavements, not only her daughter dying but her old self dying. And then she tells Lena all about the other characters, that they're basically all on a path of self-destruction, which I thought was just great. It lets you know about the characters. It was engaging and it was intelligently written. I really dug the hell out of this movie. At times extremely beautiful, at times extremely brutal. I thought it was really good. What did you think?
I didn't like it so much. I thought it was good. I think while I expected the worst from Mute, and I think that may have affected how I felt. I think the not quite rapturous, but one shade below that critical reaction to this film may have hurt it. I thought it started well. I like the way they spun a mystery without revealing any details. That's something that's very irritating. I think the first 15 minutes are sort of confusing in a really, really intriguing way. And then I think the first thing that I thought, oh dear, is there is a flashback, the most superfluous flashback in history, to Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac in bed together. You didn't need to be told that he wasn't always a traumatised drone, and they were once in love. But frolicking in a bed in a flashback,
their pillow talk isn't great either.
Oh,
it's like hyper intellectual.
Yeah. but you never need a scene of a couple frolicking in bed to know that they had a great relationship. I thought that was really, really lazy. Similarly, not long after that, I think, or maybe just before it, Natalie Portman's at work and she declines a dinner invite, and you think, well, because she's grieving, she wants to be alone, she's kind of shutting herself off from everybody else, which is, you can completely relate to it. Later on, it becomes apparent that she'd had an affair with the person asking her for dinner, and I thought, you've just made the character less interesting. It was way more interesting when she was sort of still grieving, I thought, anyway. You said all of the performances are great. I thought Gina Rodriguez, who played the lesbian, the butch, slightly aggressive, I thought she was absolutely terrible, to be honest. From the second she was on the screen, I thought the moment I saw her, I thought, because I'm not familiar, I know she's in a very popular comedy called Jane the Virgin. I know I've heard about that subsequently, but as soon as she came on screen, I thought, she's come from a soap opera. She must have come from a soap, because she reminded me of. Did you watched Australian soaps growing up?
Yeah,
like most people in this
Neighbours and Home and Away.
Neighbours and Home and Away, yeah.
The Flying Doctors, not so much.
But the thing about those shows that used to drive me insane, even as a kid, is that a distinctive actor would appear, like a new character, and they just pick up each other's bad habits. So a week later, they're all acting in exactly the same way. My favourite thing was they'd tumble over words and then slyly put their hands in the front pockets of their jeans. It didn't matter what they were saying. It didn't matter if they were trying to be. It was they just. And she's got all of these sort of really over the top mannerisms, and I thought. She's taken bad habits from herself, and she's complete. Everyone else is playing characters that are going to their deaths.
I thought all the girls were really strong. There was a slight moment in terms of how she was being aggressive that I thought was just a little bit.
And when she loses,
it was a little bit jarring because it was a little bit over the top. I didn't think it was a terrible performance. I thought it jarred on me a little bit.
I think it's even worse than Skarsgård's performance in Mute.
Wow, that's.
But she's overacting. She's persistently overacting, and it makes sense because she's sort of from a comedy.
I just felt there was such kind of all the performances were very measured. That hers, because she was this kind of, I don't know whether I thought it was just kind of, she's this aggressive, volatile character.
But
she was quite jarring.
She's in a movie. She's in something completely. Well, I was watching it and I thought my first inclination was to say she's in a completely different film. Yeah. She isn't. She's in this film, and I think she's trying to ruin it. I think some of the when she loses the plot, I thought this is hammy as fuck. And I don't know whether obviously this is not something that anybody else has felt, but I felt why is Alex Garland not sort of reining her in a little bit?
It didn't cause such a strong reaction in me. It did make me go kind of like she's being a little bit over the top here. It's jarring a little bit, but I wasn't like. No, I wasn't up in arms.
I felt like it was ruining the film. To be perfectly
but then she's not there for long. She's taken out.
Yeah, true. But then
it's only that sequence, and then she goes. And the thing is about this is that you have that sequence, and then you have one of the most unsettling I can remember for a very, very, very long time. The bear sequence is so unsettling, and it's done so brilliantly. And it's like, and what I really liked about this is that this is a film that people are certainly people are going to talk and debate about this film for a long, long time, because it's kind of like there's so much things you can talk about. It's like, does the bear absorb its emotions from its prey, or is that her consciousness speaking and vocalizing in the bear? And it's just a fucking so unsettling, and I haven't had that for a long time in a film.
Yeah, there's a very, very constantly evolving, very, very short list of directors in my mind that I'd like to see direct a horror movie, and Garland's now way at the top, because that is a really just like I was like that is horrific. Yeah. That is so horrific, and just it does maintain a sense of dread throughout, even right until the very end. To be honest, so that is an amazing. That's an amazing scene. That I had a problem with the lack of drama. To be honest, it's like a weird travelogue where like here's the bit with the bear, here's the bit when they encounter the crocodile, and here's the bit when they discover these weird sort of evolving plant things. And
it's just the visuals are just so arresting. You know,
I would love to have seen it in cinema.
100%. I ended this and I was just like, I'm so gutted. I think it got a limited release in America. Theatrical release in America.
Yeah, open wide actually.
But we didn't get treated to that in the UK, which is more's the pity, because it really deserves to be seen on a very big screen.
It sounds like they'd released it to Netflix out of spite, because Alex Garland refused to compromise and change it, and then they said, fine, we'll release it straight to Netflix, which they must have felt terrible when it got such good notices in the States, because I think it would have done really. I would have bought a ticket, like.
Absolutely. This is just this just falls into that category of perplexing sci-fi, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done. It was really impactful. There were just images that I've thought about, since watching it, that have just popped into my mind. There's so many arresting images, whether it's kind of like, a mutated pair of deers frolicking around with flowers for antlers, or whether it's just those human figures that are complete plants and stuff. It was just, and also the end sequence as well, when she's kind of going toe to toe with herself. It's just some beautiful wide-angled sort of shots of this otherworldly, shimmery place. I just thought it was great.
I just felt like there was a real lack of drama in the midsection. I was kind of just like, okay, can we just get where we're going? Because I wasn't finding that journey particularly interesting, as good as it looked. It was clearly inspired by Under the Skin, the Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Glazer, film. That film, when I saw it at the cinema, I walked around the block for 2 hours because I was so sort of just thunderstruck by it, because that's a genuinely profound film. I don't know if I feel the same way, but I certainly don't now, but I don't know whether if I watched it, I don't know whether subsequent viewings would reveal more, because it's a little bit, it's quite on the nose about how the only thing in these biological forms that are evolved from humans, the only thing that's consistent is this self-destructive impulse. That's a very, very, it's a potent statement, but I don't know if there's going to be anything. It doesn't strike me as a particularly deep film. It's one of those movies that I think is ripe for an evening's discussion after you've seen it, and it's a ride. But
I think what was interesting. I thought what was interesting about it is I think it's quite clearly it's a cancer motif. As in cells mutating and killing off. It was and the way they were dealing with it in terms of like extraction and taking things out. I thought it was a very strong cancer motif.
I just thought that they could, no matter what they did, the one consistent thing in all of those biological mutations was that it was self-destructive. Either the body was trying to destroy itself, or they physically wanted to destroy themselves. So I thought it was quite.
The way the cells, when cancer intersects cells, and they obviously mutate, and then you either extract and you could take, there's a metaphor of of her blowing up the shimmer as the extraction of the cancer, and that's why I kind of
I didn't really get anything like that from it. I mean, I just
and suicide and self-destruction. And have we got that preordained?
That's the only thing.
And you can talk about it also. The whole thing is about the end of the film. Or the end of the film is like, are those the images themselves? Or are they the original with a part of the mutation, the hybrid within them? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward that he took himself out with that grenade, she took her copy out with that grenade, so that would be her, wouldn't it? But apparently people have felt it's quite ambiguous that it may not be.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't invested enough to care at that point, weirdly enough. I liked the film a lot, but
it's just fascinating how invested you were in the last film and not this film. Whereas I completely switched off within 20 minutes, half an hour of Mute. But Annihilation, I was just gripped from beginning to end.
I was just confused by the lack of drama. I was really that's what floored me in the midsection. I was like, there's not really any sense of progression. It's a lot of weird shit they encounter on their way to the
but it's just quite. I think it's just kind of, that's just setting the whole texture and the atmosphere, and you're in this other place. And I was quite happy to have that, because you've got some great dialogue exchanges between Dr. Ventress and with Lena, and it's very well written script, so
I don't deny
that was engaging.
I don't deny that. I'm just it wasn't.
I didn't feel it was treading water, because they got into the shimmer within half an hour, right? They were in the shimmer within half an hour.
I don't necessarily think it was treading water. I was just confused at the lack of drama. It was just, you were watching a bunch of people. I mean, it was just. Yeah, I was looking for drama or something to drive the narrative a bit more than we'll eventually get to the end at some point and figure out what this is all about. The fact that you don't, I don't have a problem with, and I quite like the just some of the imagery in the finale. And it's one of those films that you're supposed to see. It's supposed to be a midnight movie that provokes discussion, and then I just on first viewing, it didn't strike me as that there was a particular amount going on.
I thought the finding the tape was done very well, very reminiscent of Event Horizon.
Yeah.
When they're finding the tape, he's cutting it out and he's got the organism moving in it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what
great moment.
I'd love to see him just to
a full-up horror film, straight up horror.
Yeah.
And the sound design and the score is really good in this
really
as
effective.
well.
Yeah.
Very, very atmospheric sound design paired with very warm acoustic guitars. It was just a really, really good choices were made in the music.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's great. Yeah, I mean, I would watch this again.
I will probably watch it again, but I was just I think this show, for me, from my side, is all about expectations, because I think that they've inevitably been affected.
Yeah. So let's get down to brass tacks then. I think I'm pretty sure which way you're going and which way I'm going.
I don't know. I haven't actually decided. In a weird way, Annihilation, as wild as it gets, is more conventional and more tasteful than Mute. I kind of like the sort of digressions, even though the digressions took over the entire narrative in Mute. I don't know what to say other than I thought it was so well acted. I thought Paul Rudd was great. I thought Justin Theroux was fantastic.
I'm never going to find Paul Rudd great, but that's just a very personal viewpoint.
I've never ever heard anybody say anything bad about Paul Rudd.
I'm sure if I look into it, there's going to be a whole kind of. I reckon there's a hate. I reckon there's a Facebook. I reckon there must be other people. It can't just be me. If anyone's listening to this and feels the same about Paul Rudd, and I realise, and it's even me saying it, I said it to somebody that I work with, he looks at me just like, what? Paul Rudd?
Yeah.
I don't know, because he's such a likeable guy, there's nothing, but I find him like, he is the absolute epitome of vanilla.
Yeah, I definitely don't feel that way. But yeah, to be honest, as much as I liked it, and I genuinely loved it, to be honest, when at the finish I was like, that's a great film. That was before I reflected upon it in any real depth. I really loved the experience of watching it. I don't think it will stand up to repeat viewings. I completely 100% agree that it is meaningless. It's just trashy pulp that I think is done very, very well. Annihilation.
I reckon it would have been better off as a 20-minute short film.
I don't agree with that.
It's so overlong.
Annihilation is a film that is worthy of discussion. I'm intrigued enough to want to watch it again, although I can say that about both these movies, but I was thinking about plumping for Mute, but I can't. Annihilation is a more worthwhile. It's certainly more worthwhile. Did I enjoy it as much? I don't think I did.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, yeah, so your personal preference is really leaning towards Mute.
No, because I don't. I mean,
you got more enjoyment out of Mute.
I did.
You're looking at it in terms of Your personal...
I understand that Annihilation, at a certain level, is a very good film.
Yeah.
I am not convinced that Mute is, but it did a number on me.
But it connected, you connected more deeply with Mute than you did with Annihilation.
I just thought it was...
But as a piece of work, it's a more complete piece, Annihilation.
I don't even say that's not how I put it. I'd say that I think I've just been forced to question why I liked Mute so much, and but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question that Annihilation's a better film. No. I will concede that, but I think if you're curious about Mute, you should know within the opening half an hour whether you want to watch it or not.
Yeah.
So I assume you're going in the same direction.
Yeah, Annihilation. Clearly, I mean, black and white, night and day. The better film on every level.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, Annihilation is the winner, but I don't think you should rule out Mute necessarily.
Skip Mute. Watch Moon.
Well, I mean, I've watched both of them. Thank you very much for listening. Check out all our social media pages and whatnot. Check us out on YouTube. All episodes will eventually be on there, cut to video. And if you've enjoyed this and you use iTunes or Apple Podcasts, please do leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. It enhances our exposure. So we'd appreciate that. But we'll be back in another couple of weeks. Thanks very much for listening. See you later.
Check you soon. Check you later. Ciao. Bless.
Cult film Face Off.
Annihilation really refers to these sort of self-destructive tendencies that we all have, and it is bizarre, when you know that our species is, well, every living being is just trying to survive, and that we're supposed to be biologically doing anything we can to survive, and yet why do we have these self-destructive tendencies that we do things we know are bad for us and we know hurt ourselves, and we do things that blow up our own lives, and both physically and mentally. So it is a really, really interesting thing to look into and examine.